Hey everybody, it's the Mad Master. I'm doing one more video because I forgot to do it as far as what I was talking to, or I was planning on doing a couple days ago. I did it on my computer, but I'm doing it on my phone instead. So this has been something that I've been thinking about with regards to everything. This is probably my second to last video about the virus. I apologize. I thought this last one was the second to last video, but I forgot that I did do this video, but I'm redoing it this way because I just feel like getting all these done in one night, I guess. I just have such a busy life, So there was one thing that I noticed about the COVID-19 as far as the areas that are having the biggest spikes and the most number of deaths. And I don't, this is pure speculation plus, because there are some articles and some scientific studies happening on this. For one, China is a very polluted country, and it turns out that northern Italy is actually pretty polluted as well. In fact, if you Google Lombardy and you Google the word pollution, there's articles for the past 5 years about how it's one of the most polluted cities in Southern Europe. So that's kind of interesting because I was just thinking, okay, smoking is probably a risk for COVID-19, right? You have these places, I don't know if I'm not sure about Portland. Yeah, Portland. Okay. Mid-sized cities, right? Madison, Wisconsin, Portland. Portland is the size of Milwaukee. Milwaukee's had 900 deaths, and I think Portland, I'd have to look this up. I think it's about 400 or 500. Milwaukee is a lot, I believe it's way more polluted than Portland. It's around this, region where there's a lot of factories, a lot of, beer, I mean, there's a lot of different stuff. I mean, there's a lot of factories and they produce beer and stuff in Milwaukee. Breweries, I'm sorry. I was just trying to think of the word. I didn't want to really fuck that up. So I was just thinking that there's got to be a link between pollution and the severity of the virus, because we've had, maybe, 30, I think it's about 37 or 38 deaths in Dane County, Wisconsin, which has 500,000 people. Still a lot of people. And then you have other cities that are, like Milwaukee has roughly, I believe it's not that, I mean, I don't think Portland, Oregon has like that many less people than Milwaukee. I'm gonna have to look it up now. Milwaukee population. Let's look that up. 592.25. Okay. Portland population. Portland is larger than Milwaukee, and I'm sure the metropolitan area probably is too. So I've always thought of Portland as like not a very polluted city, and Milwaukee is kind of like by a lot of these like old, Rust Belt kind of areas, and there's a lot more pollution there. And that's always been my assumption that Milwaukee's more polluted than Portland, because I've been in both places. And you have these Houston, like Houston has a surge and stuff. And you have all these places that have, these reasonable sized cities that don't have these huge spikes in cases, and then you have these places that do. So my thought is that pollution, and this is the whole thing happening in California now, because California, very polluted area, like LA and stuff. You could say population density all you want, and it might be partially true, but there's something about pollution with regards to this whole crisis. I mean, something that not a lot of people are saying. There's finally people trying to say, they're just like putting their thinking cap on, which is rare in these days with this virus, because, oh my God. So They're like, wait a second, I noticed this city had more population, but they have less pollution, but they had less deaths. Oh, wait, So I think that there's definitely a link between pollution and the severity of the virus and deaths and health conditions. And it just makes sense. It's like there's finally studies coming out, and they're saying this, and it's something I've been thinking about since the beginning. I mean, when I heard about these places, and I guess I'm being proven right and vindicated once again about it. So I'm not trying to boost or toot my own horn or anything, but it's just like one of those factors that people aren't talking about that much, and I'm sure people will be talking about it more as time goes on. I mean, it's one thing to have a really populated area. Like, take Sweden, for example. With some of these countries, Sweden never locked down completely, right? And they do have some densely populated areas, but I'm sure the environmental laws in some of these countries, those Northern European countries, are probably pretty stringent compared to a lot of places in the world. So when you hear about China having this huge crisis with it, like at the beginning, it's like, well, you put two and two together with these places that have these huge surges of deaths and everything. You're like, and California, speaking of that, what's funny is they locked down, they did all this stuff, they did all this mask stuff, early on. And I was just watching this guy talking about this, and it's like, how much of a surge are they having? I don't know, but it's just like, now they're locking down again to some extent. It's just like, it's like almost like, okay, so the neoliberals in power, these neoliberal, politicians, which I think California is ran by. They're not ran by, I wouldn't say that the heads of California, LA or, the Garcetti or Newsom are exactly your average, like, Bernie Sanders person, for example. I seriously doubt they're like far left kind of people. I'm pretty sure they're pretty establishment Democrats that run the state and the city, the city of LA and the state of California. So I think there's like this unconscious bias about some of the things with the virus that people have. So like, you're not going to think of these things necessarily because you're in the status quo. You're like, oh yeah, we got to have, this is how things operate, blah, blah, blah. And I'm not trying to be like a conspiracy theorist about the fact that there could be links to pollution and they're just ignoring it. I'm just saying that thinking outside the box, you got to look at these things, because it's like, you look at one area, like one state, South Dakota, for example, there are some populated areas there, but it's not like a huge, it's not a huge population. But even amongst these more dense populated areas, there's only 100-something deaths or something, in a state. I mean, the population does have to do with it, but there's all these natural places, more, like Portland. I mean, you go to Portland, you step off the plane, and you smell the pine trees. I swear. Like, when I went to Portland, years back, I got off the plane, I smelled the trees. You have that air, that open air, you have the mountains, you have the trees, you have the vegetation all around. And it's like, I think you can breathe better in those types of environments. So that's my thought about the pollution factor. I think that's going to be something that we hear. I'm going to make another prediction. I didn't put in my prediction video. And I know this video is a little bit more rickety as far as me talking, but whatever. I had to do this video. The pollution factor is going to be way more talked about in the near future. It's going to be, we're going to be like, that's it. It might actually be like one of the X factors about this whole thing. Like New Jersey, or fucking, I see all, you watch sounds bad, but you know, you watch like a movie like The Karate Kid from the 80s, and you see him driving out of New Jersey. I think they filmed part of. I'm not sure if they. I don't think they filmed part of it in New Jersey, but it's supposed to be New Jersey. All these factories and all this fucking smog and shit driving out of there. I mean, it's ridiculous. I just think about it. It's ridiculous. I think about New Jersey and I think about Karate Kid, but whatever. Like you watch movies or you read these articles about New Jersey and you see just smog in New York, and you know, like LA is notoriously smog ridden, you know. So I think that's a huge factor in the virus. It might actually, I wouldn't say that it trumps population density per se, but it might actually kind of just add this little factor that exponentially makes it a lot worse. In fact, there is an article that said like 8% risk of bad outcomes with COVID with regards to if you're a certain type of pollution. This is stuff. This is cutting edge shit. I swear, this is cutting edge shit. We're gonna hear about this. Just like I was just watching as another Sunetra Gupta interview from 2 months ago. And if you look at the unheard interview from 2 months ago, what you can do is look 6 minutes and 45 seconds. What she says in that part of the interview, the New York Times just says it did a front page article about 2 months later about the T-cell immunity and all that. So people have been saying this stuff for a while. That's my whole thing about this. It's like someone will say something and then they're oh, she's downplaying the virus because she's against lockdowns. Oh my God. You know, even comments now are saying that from months ago and from now. She was talking about how the virus is kind of going to go through Britain and and there's a little bit of a surge in some places. And I looked at the numbers. I actually did look at the numbers. I talked about in the previous video that I was going to look at the numbers in Great Britain. You look at the numbers, there's not been a significant spike since. There was a little bit of a spike like mid-July, but it's down to like March numbers, at least as far as cases. Deaths are like pretty much eliminated. I mean, I think there was like, not pretty much, but like, I think it was like 10 deaths yesterday or something in Britain from it. It's like really minuscule. While in America, we're having like thousands of deaths every day. But, you know, I think that's going to eventually slow down too. Like I said, like I think like mid-September through early October, we're going to have a significant dip in deaths in these in the Sun Belt states that are having these surges of cases and deaths. That's my prediction, and obviously that's a controversial thing to say, but you know, watching all these. Probably several hundred videos that I've watched by all these epidemiologists over the past 5 months, reading all these interviews, reading all this material about all this stuff. I'm not trying to toot my own horn again, but I think I have a little bit of a grasp on what's going on now. I think it's beginning to like kind of clear to me with regards to this. I think Gupta's onto something. I think Levitt hopefully is onto something. He was wrong about Israel, okay? He was wrong about Israel. He was wrong about a couple other things too, but he was right about 2 or 3 other things, like, you know, I said in my previous video. So when we look at this, when in history, this is going to be a significant thing, because like, and it sounds kind of new agey and shit again, but like, the planet is crying. That's why, but the pollution thing is a factor. I mean, sorry, it is. It is huge. I think it's a bigger factor than we even know, because I'm in Madison, Wisconsin, not a very polluted city, not a very industrial city to begin with. There's a few factories and stuff, but if we're in Milwaukee or Chicago or like Erie, Indiana, or some of these more polluted cities, Chicago's not that. Actually, not. I don't know about Chicago that much. I don't know if they've had. I'd have to look at their cases. Illinois has not done the greatest, but they haven't done really that terrible. But if you look at Texas, I mean, Texas is one of the most polluted places in America. I mean, I used to go, I'll just give you a case in point. So I have some relatives that live in Texas. They live in like Houston. As a kid, we used to go down there and visit them. And, you know, I'd get pretty tired late at night and be like, oh, we're finally almost at grandma's house, right? And I'm like, oh, wow, we're downtown Houston. Oh, no, my dad's like, those are oil refineries, not the skyscrapers. I'm like, holy shit. It's like a city of oil refineries and all this, like, smog. Like, during the day, it's like, you have to pinch your nose. Like, they don't, even back then, they didn't drink the water from the water fountain, from the tap water. Tap water was like, you're not going to drink that tap water? You know? It was bad. It was bad news. I mean, my grandmother told me like 5 people on her block died of cancer in 1 year one time because just how bad the fucking pollution was. So it's definitely a factor, you know. Lifestyle is a factor too, obesity, you know, and all these other things. So that's why America's being hit hard. Of course, there's some contention about that with regards to with COVID cases. And of course, I've talked about in previous videos, which I still don't have an answer. Please answer why they do that. Someone. Why they count those cases and why they didn't before with other pandemics and stuff. So, yeah, I think pollution's a factor. I think we're going to have studies, we're going to have these studies. 5 years from now, we're going to be like, pollution caused. Like, I would say it's going to be like such a factor. Like, it's going to be really large, like 10 or 20% of why the crisis happened. It's going to be because of pollution. I mean, okay, this is going out on a limb, but I would say like 10 to 20% of it will be because of pollution, because certain types of chemicals in the air are causing people's lungs to have some type of susceptibility with regards to the virus. I would bet someone, you know, $100 on that right now, that 5 years from now we're going to say that, because it just seems like that's where it's going. And this is going to be the second to last virus video for a while, obviously. Like I said, the last one was, but this is the one I forgot to finish, and then I forgot to do, and that's why I'm doing it now. So that's what I got to say about that. And that's another prediction of mine. I guess could be my 6th prediction of what's going to happen. But yeah, it's pollution is a factor. Pollution is what's causing some of the severity of the virus, undoubtedly. I mean, 500,000 people is a lot of people, and that's my county. But we're not, you know, we don't have population density is average maybe in the city, and it's not like it's, you know, absolutely like not dense at all anywhere. But yeah, we've had like 37 or 38 deaths in the whole time, and you know it's just, and there's places that are locked down since the beginning, like in California, that are having surges. And why? Well, they're going to find out, and it's going to be a lot of it's going to be pollution. So I think that's a really big factor in this whole thing. I think it's like one of those X factors, like one of those unknown things that are contributing. So that's really all I got to say. This is my, other than the video on Friday, that's my last video about the virus, because I'm going to focus on other things for a while, like I said in my previous video. And I hope to kind of rewind in November and say, what was I wrong about? What was I right about? A lot of these things like Sunetra Gupta or Michael Levitt, or some of these other people, like, or the dreadedly controversial Tegnell from Sweden. Who was right? Who was wrong? Was Ferguson right all along? Well, we're all gonna die. Oh! I mean, we'll find out, I guess, in the next couple months. But, like I said, I predict the deaths are gonna go down again, and I think the cases are gonna go down. I read about this shit. I've read about this shit too much. I've gone down this rabbit hole. I mean, it's just like this rabbit hole just to figure this out. I just want to figure it out, figure out why. But I think that's part of the cognitive bias of some of these people, is that they're not going to talk about pollution because, like, wait a second, because they're contributing to it. These neoliberal establishment Democrat politicians are contributing to the problem of pollution, because they're corporatist fucking scumbags. Let's just be blunt, And I'm not doing much about pollution myself, but I'm just saying, like, they don't want to actually think about that. They don't want to like confront that in their mind. I think that's part of it. And that's why they're not mentioning that, or the media is not mentioning that, because of the corporations and the establishment. But I think they'll start to do it a little, at least on some level. And I think it's going to be found to be a lot more of a prominent part of it than once thought. And it's pretty obvious, And I'll put a link in the description about some of these studies that are being done in California and proposed. There's some people getting together and doing this because they agree with me. I said this like 2 months ago myself. Now I'm a prophetic, like, epidemiologist, honorary epidemiologist by talking about this. I told my sister this like weeks ago, and I think I talked about it with other relatives and friends and stuff months ago too. So, oh my God, I'm a prophet. Oh no, it just put 2 and 2 together, for fuck's sake. That's all it is. It's not that fucking complicated. So that's all, and peace out.